North of Poseidon Energy, south of the Warwick homestead, is the wreck of the FMS Northern Star. You might do a double take the first time you see this ship. Many of my viewers have said that the tent at the top of the ship reminds them of Jabba the Hutt's floating party palace that met its end in the Sarlacc pit. But this wreck is not the home of Jabba the Hutt. It is the home of half a dozen or so Norwegian Ghoul raiders. That's right, I'm not making that up. That's a very specific thing that Bethesda has included in Fallout 4. Do I have any Norwegians in the house today? Does this make you happy? We know that these Ghoul raiders are Norwegian because they actually shout at you in Norwegian. I extracted some of the sound files from the game using the creation kit. Here's a sample of what they say.
La oss være I fred.
If Google Translate is correct, this means leave us alone.
Gå vekk fra våre skip.
Which means get off our ship.
Du vil angripe oss.
Which means you'll regret attacking us.
Det for vondt.
Which means that hurt.
Jeg kommer hjem.
Which means I'm going back home.
Du bor ikke være her.
Which means you shouldn't be here.
Hva vil du ha fra oss?
Which means what do you want from us?
Du vil dø for dette.
Which means you'll die for this. Now, I don't know Norwegian, and I can't recognize these accents, but I did read online that somebody identified the Norwegian accent used by these Ghoul raiders as coming from the northern end of Norway, which this person said is famous for its shipping and fishing. Now, the Northern Star is actually a real ship. It's likely that the FMS Northern Star is named after the real-world ship MS Nord Sternin, and I apologize for butchering that, but in Norwegian it translates to Northern Star. It was used as a cruise ship until it was decommissioned in 2012, when it was protected as a piece of national heritage in Norway. Since Fallout 4 was being made around that time, it's likely that the developers read about the Northern Star in the news and decided to incorporate it in their game. They've done this before. The Pink Paste episode is actually a reference to a real-world experiment done in the United States that we learned about in around 2012, but I'll be getting to that in another video. Like the FMS Northern Star, the MS Nord Sternin is black and red, but that's about where their similarities end. It does, however, bear a striking resemblance to Libertalia and the MS Azalea in Far Harbor. The MS Northern Star was a cruise liner, and the FMS Northern Star is clearly a cargo ship. You enter the vessel by walking through the rusted-out hull. This is where we find much of the cargo that the Northern Star was carrying. We find shipping container after shipping container stacked up here inside the hull. We also learned that this vessel was fusion-powered. Towards the front of the wreck, we find a series of nuclear reactors, one of which still has a fusion core inside. There's also a bunch of machinery that I don't recognize. There's a complicated-looking piece of machinery in the wreck of the nose of the vessel, and in the middle, we find what appears to be maybe a boiler. It looks like some sort of container for fuel or liquid or something. It's connected throughout the vessel with a series of pipes, which we see on the ceiling of this lower compartment. It's good to be in power armor or to wear a hazmat suit when exploring, because there are a lot of barnacles all over the place in this rusted out bottom portion that spits radioactive slime at you. A couple doses of these can kill you really quickly. Also beware that there are a bunch of mirelurks in the bottom. The Norwegian raider ghouls shoot at you through the cracks in the top of the deck while you're exploring the cargo hold. You can actually kill many of these raider ghouls before you get to the top of the deck, just by shooting up through the holes. You find pathways made of plywood on top of some of the fallen storage containers that wind its way through the cargo hold. When you get to the very back of the ship, you need to be careful, especially if you are in power armor. This part of the ship is sunk deep in the water, and if you fall in with some power armor, you could lose that suit permanently because you won't be able to get back up. This water is very deep. If you hop out of your suit of power armor and swim around, you can find a cooler, and in the very back, you find a cage that has a yellow explosive box inside. There's a hole in the top that you can use to swim inside and loot the box. I found quite a large stash of fragmentation grenades. Winding back to the pathway atop the cargo crates brings you up onto the deck level of the wreck. We find a couple of Mirelurk corpses here, so it looks like the Norwegian raider ghouls have been fighting them off. If you take a ladder to the top of the control room, you find a skeleton with a laser rifle. He's not dressed like any of the other Norwegian raider ghouls, so I don't know if he's one of the original crew members who simply didn't get turned into a ghoul, or maybe a scavenger who stumbled upon the place and was killed by the Norwegian raider ghouls at a later date. We don't really find a lot that tells us the story of these raider ghouls. Norway is a long way away from Boston. What likely happened is the bombs fell while the FMS Northern Star was out to sea. Maybe the vessel lost its power in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and drifted towards Boston. Or maybe it was just off the shore of Boston, waiting to dock and unload its wares when the bombs dropped, knocking out its engines, and then it drifted to the shore where it began to rust. Either way, the Norwegians on board stayed on board and have been there, presumably, for over 200 years. The language barrier is what probably kept them on board. They couldn't communicate with anyone else in Boston, which may explain why they're hostile towards you. They've likely been attacked by raiders, super mutants, gunners, and others every day of their existence, which has caused them to form a knee-jerk reaction against anyone who comes into their home. They're extremely defensive, and of course they don't venture out. Their dialogue options aren't really hostile and more defensive. They say, leave us alone, get off our ship, go away from us, you'll regret attacking us, what do you want from us, etc., etc. They clearly feel like they are being invaded, which raises a problem for someone who's trying to do a good person playthrough. Because we only kill raiders after they first attack us. Now yes, the Norwegian ghouls here on this ship are called raiders, but nothing in their dialogue says that they are raiders. There are no terminal entries that show that they are raiders. The only thing that tells us they are raiders is that their name in the game is Raider. Yes, they do attack you first, but only after you invade their ship. That's clearly how they perceive your actions. Yes, you're just exploring, and you should be free to explore, but then again, it is their home. It's their property, and you are trespassing. In their minds, I think it's clear that they're defending their home from an attack. Perhaps they see any sort of exploration of their vessel as an attack from someone else. So these are some of the only quote-unquote raiders I find in the game that I actually have a problem with attacking. If we left them well enough alone, they would never venture out and attack us. So why should we attack them? That said, there is one thing that makes me feel okay with completely clearing out the vessel of all of the Norwegian raider ghouls. And that's that if you set up supply lines between the Warwick homestead and any other settlement, the ghouls attack your provisioners. It happens to me all the time. I'll fast travel into the Warwick homestead and then the entire settlement raids the ship because one of my provisioners wandered just a little bit too close to the FMS Northern Star and the ghouls started attacking. My provisioner isn't exploring their ship, it isn't invading their territory, it's not trespassing, and yet they still attacked. For those reasons, I do think that it is moral to clear the vessel. Otherwise, the ghouls may attack innocents and kill them. On the table, in the middle of the ship, we find Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor Issue number 8, which decreases the price of items you buy from vendors by 3%. At the bow of the ship, under the rickety shack, we find a stealth boy on top of a toilet, and inside the shack, we find the leader of this Norwegian ghoul raider gang named Rags. Next to the terminal is a mini nuke, and at the very bow of the ship, on the furthest point, is the Agility bobblehead.
Hell yeah.
There are 2 terminals on this ship, interestingly enough, both in English, which doesn't make a lick of sense, but neither of them have any interesting lore. They only disable turrets and spotlights. When done, you can leave the ship either by jumping off of the bow using power armor, or standing in the lifeboat, which has conveniently been turned into an elevator. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of the wreck of the FMS Northern Star. things are still admittedly a little cryptic. We don't know a lot about these people and what happened to them over the past 200 years. We don't know what these Norwegians were trying to trade with the Americans here in Boston, and we can only surmise that they stayed on their ship due to the language barrier. I must admit that I did feel a little bad killing each of these raider ghouls when all they really wanted was for strangers to stay away, but as the General of the Minutemen, I have to make sure that my provisioners and free citizens of the Commonwealth are safe to walk the wastelands. So goodbye, Rags, and your Norwegian raider ghouls. Do I have any viewers from Norway who can give me greater insight into the accents that these raider ghouls were using? Did you notice any language mistakes as they spoke or in the translations that Bethesda gave us? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section of this video. I read all of your comments on my videos and I use them as inspiration for my future videos. If you'd like to join the Oxhorn community on Discord, check out the invitation link that I've included in the description of this video. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad that you're here watching this video today. Thank you for watching from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.